Sherry Shaban, welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. Thank you so much for taking part in this interview today. I'm very happy to have you here, especially when I read your profile. I was very excited to interview you. For those who are unfamiliar with your work, could you tell us what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm so honored to be here today. So, I'm a health and life coach based from Montreal, Quebec, Canada, where it's quite cold over here. And I'm also an osteopath and the creator of Fall in Love with Fitness podcast and Make Peace with Food.
I love it. So you're based in Montreal now?
Yes.
You're very cold.
Very cold. Not
I'm,
very cool, but very cold.
yeah, I'm in Barcelona, so it's a little bit warmer. Yeah.
Oh,
Have you been to
beautiful.
Barcelona?
I have not. No, no, I haven't. But that's definitely on the bucket list. I've been in other areas in Europe, but Spain is definitely on top of the list.
Amazing. So what inspired you to follow this path of health and fitness?
Well, super interesting actually. I think growing up, I always kind of envisioned myself being a teacher of some sort, and I always saw myself in that environment of helping others. And when I was growing up, I was really heavily involved in sports. I was a competitive swimmer. I was on all the varsity sports. I was always MVP, placed first place, that type of thing. And then by the time I got into high school, one day I was actually going downtown. I was living in Switzerland at that time. I was going downtown to purchase Pearl Jam concert tickets with my roommate, and I was struck by a car. And I ended up damaging my spine in that accident, and then needing to go on and have back surgery and being told, of course, that I was never allowed to play sports again. And so I had actually listened to that doctor's advice for many years up until my early 20s, where one day I just kind of woke up and I'm like, okay, who is this person? This is not me. I'm doing all these things that are really not aligned with who I am or who I always envisioned myself to be. And then it was that time, actually, I was studying chemistry of all things, doing my master's in chemistry. It was during that time that I actually went into the gym and then just started to watch what people were doing, and I started to imitate people. And I did this for many, many months. And to make a super long story short, after the span of a few months, I was actually able to come off of my pain medication, which I was relying on a daily basis. And that's what really just sort of opened up my eyes to this is my purpose. And after having overcome my back pain, I wanted to help other people do this too, because if I was never allowed to play sports again, and here I found a way to find stability and strength, I wanted to help people overcome obstacles. And so that's really what began my journey into helping people overcome either obstacles of injury or dis-ease, or even just struggles with releasing weight or limiting beliefs around identity. And so it's just been an ongoing journey, and I'm a student for life, and the journey continues.
Oh, I think I'd feel really invincible if I managed to prove a doctor wrong. Did you feel like that? It's,
Well, there was part of me that was a bit angry, like, why did you tell me this? Like, that's not
mm,
true. But then also it just humbled me so much into just this beautiful intelligence and knowing of the human body, and the human body is our internal physician, because if we actually just tune out all of the things that we hear and the things that we're told we're supposed to do and not supposed to do, and actually intuitively start to listen to our body, we're going to know what we should eat, and we're going to know what feels right for us, and we're going to know how we should move, and we're going to know what feels right in terms of all the other components of our diet, which also includes the conversations that we sit in, the things that we watch on TV, the influences that we have from our environment. And so I truly believe that once we're actually in that listener of what really the body is calling for, then the answers will always appear.
that's really amazing. So I've read that you are plant-based, and why is that? And how long have you been plant-based? And what inspired you to not eat animal products? Was it
Yeah,
convenience?
so a few times actually in my life I had tried to transition into being plant-based, and the first couple times I'll say I think I just got busy and I wasn't super keen and just respectful of what I was actually ingesting, which is why I prefer the word plant-based. I know we had that conversation versus vegan. And the first time I was in my early 20s, and I just wasn't being mindful of what I was consuming. As long as it didn't have animal product, I was consuming it, and which didn't necessarily translate to optimal health for me, and I started getting anemic and things like that. But actually, the second time, and the time that I actually did it properly, was around 2019. It was the beginning of 2019, and that was actually the year that my mom passed away. And the reason I started, and during that time, I'll say I wasn't a big animal product eater in any case, but she was very ill. She was terminally ill, and at one point, she just could not eat any more animal products. She just couldn't digest it. And so while the rest of my family was like, come on, eat and you need nutrients, I was actually doing the opposite. And I said, you know, mom, I'm going to support you and I'm just going to follow what you're doing and I'm going to support you through it. And so the first big question, of course, for me was, will I become ill as I did before? Because I just want to make sure that I was eating a very complete and balanced nutrient spectrum. And so it just became a natural flow. And because I'm more mindful around how I'm really balancing out my meals, it just gave me so much energy and vitality. And then just the thought of even knowing that vibrationally that I'm not charged with any sort of energy that the animal who was likely suffering is, absorbed by me, just already feels also very, very relieving. And so that was really the main, sort of instigator behind why I did. And then I just continued, and it just is the right fit. And, I'm an environmentalist. I have so much respect and honor for all the lives, even the lives of plants that really
Mm.
give up their lives to sustain ours is to be honored. And so it just feels that, and again, not to be sort of generalized, but it feels that this is this is almost a respect to our environment and a respect to our body and a respect also just to the sustainability of our planet.
I completely agree with you. I'm actually a vegan because since about 6 years, and also someone in my family had some health issues, and that kind of really inspired me. But before that, I discovered vegan YouTube, and I was a vegetarian for most of my life. But then I started to learn things about dairy, which really disgusted me. So I gradually eliminated that. But it was so hard, to give up things like cheese and milk chocolate. And then there was a turning point where it was a health concern, and I felt that also it's kind of like a vibrational thing as
Yes.
well. And I would consider myself to be, whole foods, plant-based. But I actually I organize some vegan dining events here in Barcelona. And it's interesting because vegans kind of never agree on what the right way is. It's like, oh, you're not vegan enough. Or some people think who use the word vegan, it's all about animals, and they're happy to eat really bad food, because that's what you were talking about before. It's the word vegan does not mean healthy.
Right.
I think it's important to be a kind of a shining example of what you're preaching. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, 100%. And really we're also focused on the whole plant-based whole food emphasis, and that's I think what is also really really important. And to your point, Venus, I never understood purchasing, let's say, vegan meat,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
And
me
like
too.
those I just don't know how they go together. And so for me, like that just it's either or. And so why not have some mushroom instead and just call it mushroom because it is mushroom, instead of calling it, a vegan burger because there's all these, these other things in that. And so I absolutely agree. And I think it's really important just to understand that by removing animals from our diet, there's also that responsibility of it just not focusing on processed food as being our primary nutrients, or essentially what we look at food as, because that is food like substance. It's not real food, it's food like substance. And it's important just to note the difference, because the more that we want to start to eat in a natural way that does actually respect the environment, well, we have to also understand how a lot of this processed food is made and how that is damaging or harming the environment as it does come to our plates.
Do you believe in organic food? Do you eat
Um,
organic?
Not for everything. Again, sort of for everyone, there's this place where you draw the line. But generally, for me, if I will eat or consume the peel of something, then I would prefer for it to be organic. So something like a banana,
Mm,
where you peel away, it's a very thick peel, so not necessarily so. And then, of course, there's the dirty dozen. So,
mm,
you have certain fruits and vegetables that are generally heavily pesticide compared to other fruits, so apples and strawberries being some of them. And so, yeah, there's always an attempt to, however, it also gets so tricky these days. I don't know what you think about that, Venus, but it gets so tricky these days with the marketing, and everyone can call anything organic, and it may not necessarily be 100% organic, but there are, and especially in Canada, there's certain claims that you can make around something being organic, and even though it's not 100% organic from the moment that it was planted to the moment that it was harvested. And so that's just something also to be mindful of.
Yeah, here in Barcelona, it's amazing because we have farmers markets, so you can buy
Mhm.
directly from a farmer, and then it's actually quite cheap, and the flavor is incredible as well. So it's kind of actually no difference in price. You just have to be a little bit more organized because it's not every day. You have to go Saturday morning and get your produce, and it's nice because every time you go, because it's in season and local, every time you go there's different offer, so it's kind of nice to respect the seasons as well.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I think Europe is always further ahead than North America. So we're going to catch up at some point.
Great. So speaking of, it's a very controversial topic when you're into, plant-based eating and fitness. So this question must come up quite a lot for you. Can you really build muscle? I've seen your Instagram, so you can, but I mean, what do you say to that when people say, where do you get your protein from? Um,
Yeah. Oh,
how do you
such
say
a
that? Muscle, protein, and what do you think is the best plant-based protein source?
such a great question, and I'm so happy you asked that. And just for fun, I don't track my macros or my calories or any of that. As you know, I'm anti-diet. But
Mhm.
what I wanted to do is just get an idea of how much protein I was consuming. So when I did completely transition to plant-based in 2019, as I shared, I actually also downloaded my fitness app,
Mhm.
my Fitness Pal app, and I started to just track my food. And so, without trying to focus on higher protein sources such as legumes and other, vegetables and plant-based food, I was just, okay, let me just put a whole bunch of color on my plate. That was my main goal, as much color as possible. I'm going to eat the rainbow. And then I'm going to track things and actually specifically look for how many grams of protein are in this salad or in this meal that I've put. So things like quinoa, or let's say brown or wild rice mixed with Brussels sprouts and some chia seeds and some hemp seeds. Every single meal would be approximately 25 to 33 grams of protein. And I wasn't trying. There was no
That's
effort that
amazing.
I was trying. Yeah, absolutely. And then when you understand actually how protein is synthesized, it comes from plants. So
Yeah.
protein is actually comes from plants. And then the animals eat the plants. And then we eat the animals, right? And so we're actually receiving protein in the food chain, not even from its original source. And so again, if you look at in nature, apes, for example, their diet is 100% plants. And
Mm.
yet they're look at the lean body mass that they're able to build. And so this is actually a really big misconception. And I've never ever heard anyone in North America die or suffer from protein deficiency. Protein deficiency actually comes from starvation. And so if you see, for example, populations in Africa where they have marasmus and other conditions due to protein deficiency, it's actually entire nutrient deficiency and calorie deficiency, which is why that ends up happening. And so it's amazing, again, not emphasizing protein as that important magical, macronutrient, and just really trying to eat as diverse as possible, allowing your body to really receive nutrients from a wide range of spectrum of different types of vegetables and plants is really the way to get enough protein in your diet, and then also to start to see that effect in the gym as you are doing resistance training.
Amazing. So next question I have for you is, what does it mean to be anti-diet?
Oh, so good. So coming back to what we were talking about before, just being more intuitively in tune with your body. So throughout my journey, as I shared with you when I first came into the fitness world, I was trying to find that right way to eat. And so I had actually gone through and experimented with all the different types of diets out there. There was the keto diet, and then there was the low fat diet and the low carb diet and all of these things. And really at the end of the day, what diets actually give us is information that is very, very confusing. And the more we search, the more we find scientific backup as to why we should or should not eat certain things. And so, what that actually ends up doing is first making us very confused. Second of all, removing that intuitive connection that we have with our body, this inner intelligence where our body actually tells us or suggests to us what it needs in terms of nutrients. And so anti-diet essentially means that you're in tune with your diet, you're with your body, you're listening to what the diet for your particular body is, and you're not creating restrictions around certain foods because you're focused on body image or even focusing on wanting to release weight. And so I always get asked that question, how do you have a six pack? How are you so lean and you're not, you don't count your macros, you don't eat all this meat and protein. And really it's because you start to listen to your body. It is this beautiful thing to be so in tune with your body and have it choose for you. And we can all get to that place if we actually just quiet down the inflammation in the body, focus on gut health, and really focus on removing some of the foods that cause inflammation, such as dairy, as you brought up, and just noticing if gluten also creates inflammation. And then you'll start to be able to pick up those cues as to what your body needs most.
I think when people think about intuitive eating, does that mean if you fancy chocolate, you can have chocolate? And how does it, where are the limits?
Yeah, so good, and I'm happy you brought that up because I see this also on Instagram. These funny reels, which unfortunately are viral, but people eating donuts, this is intuitive eating, and people eating fast food, and this is intuitive eating. And no, intuitive eating is not suggesting or promoting dis-ease or unhealth, but instead it's actually really, again, listening to your body's cues. So imagine, Venus, if I gave you a bag of apples, okay, and I've got a 5 pound bag of apples, and then I also have a gluten-free, vegan-free, rather vegan Oreo cookie box that I gave you. And I said, okay, eat as much as you can from both boxes, right? It's interesting to see how we could probably get through 1 or 2 entire rows of those Oreo cookies. But if I asked you to eat as many apples as you could possibly consume, I'm sure you'll stop around 2, maybe 3, maybe you'll get to 3. Okay, but I don't see most of us actually eating more than 3 or 4 apples in one sitting. And so that is just, again, the magnification and the display of intuitive eating is that when we start to eat foods that are natural and from our environment directly the way nature intended and the way nature made it, there's only so much that we can actually consume because our body doesn't count calories, it counts nutrients. And that's why it's so easy to get into the rows and rows of Oreo cookies and donuts and still not feel satisfied. And so intuitive eating is not suggesting that we eat foods that are processed, but it also does indicate that there is this flexibility and this freedom. And if we do have a piece of chocolate, then there is no guilt or shame around it. We don't need to eat the entire bar, but also that we realize that the body, again, is always seeking out nutrients and it's seeking out balance and reducing inflammation because that is what it favors. And our body builds up our cell membranes from that food that we eat. It builds up every single tissue and structure in our body from the food that we eat. And therefore, it'll always choose the foods that is natural and the foods that it can actually use to help build and reconstruct the body.
What do you think about cheat meals? Do you have a favorite cheat meal?
I don't use the word cheat because cheat is
Okay.
such a right. It's such a polarized word anyway. And so no, I food is just food for me. And if I were allowed to allow myself to choose, the majority of the time, 80-90% of the time, I'm eating whole foods and I'm not eating anything processed. And then every now and then I'll have a sweet tooth. And if I feel like having a piece of chocolate, for example, I'll get the good stuff.
Oh
So it's gonna
yeah.
be the best stuff.
That's a good point because we have this really amazing shop called the Organic Market near here, and they do this amazing chocolate, which is because in Germany they make a lot of really good products for vegans. But it's a vegan dark chocolate. I think it's black cherry chocolate, and it's
Yummy.
just amazing, and it's organic. So I don't feel so guilty when I get some of that because it's just
Right.
about maybe having a magnesium craving or something. Oh,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like it. Absolutely.
mm. Okay, so do you have any do you have 3 tips, for example, for people who want to start 2024 in a healthier way?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that I'll say, and this is something that I share often, is always establish consistency first before adding intensity. And normally when we think about New Year's or if we're about to turn the big 4-0 or 5-0, we're always talking or thinking that we suddenly need to ramp everything up overnight. And so what I'll always say is just take it one bite at a time. And it's not the intensity that creates results, it is the consistency, which means that you consistently show up for yourself. And whether that means you show up for 5 minutes or an hour, it's so important that you just establish and build that muscle first, if you will, before you start to add on really the volume. And so it's always more challenging to go for a 5 minute walk, to go from couch to 5 minute walk, than it is to go from 5 minutes to 60 minutes. And therefore, if you can master just that showing up for yourself, you're solid and you're fully committed. And then number two, always make sure that whatever you decide, whatever new habit that you take on, that it is enjoyable for you. Because if you enjoy what you're doing, if you enjoy what you're eating, if you enjoy the activity that you're engaged in, it's always going to be super fun to show up for it. And then number three, I will invite you maybe to readdress your goals. So for example, if you have a weight loss goal for 2024, let's say you intend to release 30 pounds, instead of having that as your goal, maybe set up a goal where you're actually wanting to become the person who is 30 pounds lighter. And that's really a very big shift, because you're not focused on outcome, you're not just focused on the result, but you're actually focused on transformation. And so as you focus on becoming the person who is, what you're actually doing is setting up your entire life to support that goal, which means you would change how you're eating, you'd change how you're moving, you'd even change your personal environment in order to continue to support that goal.
This one thing I noticed about the language you used there, you said release 30 pounds. Is that really important to say something like that instead of lose?
Yes, absolutely. And words are so important. And I actually want to add on one more thing to that. But when we lose our keys, we hope to find them. But when we
Okay.
release something, we're really letting go. And so
Okay.
that's
Love
a
it.
empowering word. Yeah, absolutely. And along those lines, just again with language, whenever we're thinking about goals, for example, whenever we're thinking about I want to train 3 times a week, and instead of thinking about I'm going to try to do something or I hope to do something, which generally indicates that we're not fully committed or there's, one foot in, one foot out, we want to actually use the words I am to have certainty. So I am training 3 times a week versus I hope to train 3 times a week, or I'll try to work out 3 times a week next year. So just being a bit more certain with the words, and then also the way that we speak to ourselves. And that's one of the greatest triggers of all, is really our self-talk. If I have negative self-talk and I've started working out and I've started to really honor my health and start to focus on self-care, well, that self-talk is actually going to influence my results and not my actions. And so just being mindful of how we treat ourselves, imagine that we are speaking to our best friend or our child as we do speak to ourselves, will make a massive shift. And we know that we definitely show up and commit when we have more positive influence and positive intentions versus having that negative self-talk at all times.
Definitely. I love it. 3 years ago, I was in hospital with COVID and pneumonia. And it was really quite shocking, actually. I was in hospital for 10 days, and I was in a private hospital. So I got like Instagram friendly vegan food. It was amazing. It was really good. But all the doctors were saying to me, oh, your blood results are really bad. You're gonna have to get results or analysis every 3 months because you're a vegan. So it kind of gave the medical community were really kind of like not supportive. And I was thinking about, if you look at the people in the hospital, how many are vegan and how many eating meat, I was a
Right.
an exception. And also I had really bad anemia because before I went to hospital, I didn't eat for 10 days because I was so weak. So I had really
Right.
bad anemia. I had to have an iron transfusion. And then when I came out, I was kind of on a mission to become a really good, healthy vegan. So I had to eat a bit more iron. And
Mm.
because it took me a while to get my strength back because of the pneumonia, I actually gained about 10 kilos, which is a lot. And I'd never gained that much weight in my life. I've maybe given or lost or released or
Mm.
gained maybe 5 kilos hit back and forth. But to 10 kilos was to a point where I had to get new pairs of jeans and stuff. Then I went to a vegan, when I got better, I went to a vegan nutritionist, and they put me on a high protein, low carb diet. And that, the first month it was like, I could get back into my jeans again. And I kind of liked the high protein because it made me fuller. It was interesting because I'm from an Irish family where it's all potatoes and bread. So it was kind of
Right.
like brought up a lot on those starchy carbs. And now I've just kind of learned the habits, and I've got into that habit now. It's been over 2 years. but I'm kind of a bit more lenient on myself. But at home, I kind of like have can continue with that. I want to lose about 5 more kilos. I'm thinking, how can I do it? Because I'm now thinking, should I incorporate all these things that I gave up, such as quinoa that you talked about earlier? And I guess some people just want to lose just about 2-3 kilos and not have a huge transformation, but maybe 5 kilos. Do you have any tips on how to do that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so the nutrition aspect is, that's one component. And then of course, the exercise that we're doing is the other component. And then we'll divide the exercise into what I call purposeful and then non-purposeful exercise. And your purposeful exercise is really what you've scheduled in on your agenda. That could be your yoga, that could be your weightlifting session, that could be your cycling, whatever that is actually a structured exercise time. And then the non purposeful exercise, that is the most powerful and most often overlooked. And non purposeful is really all the other movement that you do throughout the day. And so that includes, for example, walking. That is low impact movement
Mm.
throughout the day. And one really, really powerful shift that I would suggest to anybody who already feels like, okay, I've got the diet rearranged and I'm really enjoying what I eat. I feel really good. I'm going to the bathroom well. I'm sleeping really well. That's all right. I don't want to restrict. I don't want to get into a calorie deficit, which is really something important to note because the more we reduce our calories, what we actually do is start to slow down our metabolism too if we do that for a prolonged amount of time. And if you're also feeling like your training is going well, you're enjoying what you're doing, you've been showing up consistently, but you're still a little something is missing, that's where we can then start to focus on the non-purposeful exercise. So adding something like 10,000 or 15,000 steps to our day is really, really powerful. And not that I count calories, but just to give you an idea, burning, let's say 10,000 steps per day. So committing to 10,000 steps per day burns anywhere between 350 to 600 calories depending on your body weight. That is per day. So imagine if 3,500 calories equals 1 pound of fat. Imagine what would happen if I incorporated a daily ritual of minimum of 10,000 steps every single day. What could that look like by the end of the year? And so I would say, Venus, before you make any more changes around nutrition or any more changes even around training, if you don't already have a practice of daily steps or walking, then I would suggest maybe to look at that. And then if let's say we're currently at 3,000 or 4,000 steps as our daily average, then slowly start to ramp that up to 7,000, 8,000 until you make it to 10,000. Some tricks that I would suggest is, for example, doing your laundry, putting one article away at a time, not asking someone to grab you a glass of water. These are the things that I do. And then I always make a joke that I have a pair of AirPods and I spend at least 10,000 steps a day looking for these AirPods and trying to find the case. So there's always ways to get creative around getting more steps in your day. But does that resonate with you?
Absolutely. And I am in Barcelona. It's a very walkable city. I haven't been on public transport for, it'll be 4 years now in at the beginning of this year and 2024. So it's very easy to walk everywhere here. And I've just started doing salsa again, which is incredible because I have my phone in my like bum bag when I'm doing salsa and I see that it's like 10,000 steps just from dancing because it's
Oh,
counting
amazing.
the steps. So every Saturday I do salsa, I get like 18,000 steps because it's quite crazy.
Ah,
But what about things like
that's amazing.
hormones? Because that can kind of like it gets hard. Because I remember, let's say in 2016, I was at a time in my life where I could eat anything, and I was about 10 kilos less. I was
Right.
vegetarian as well. I was eating those Dr. Wecker pizzas and just eating whatever I
Oh,
wanted.
wow.
And then now I eat a lot
Yeah.
healthier
Yeah.
and I'm heavier now. Hmm.
Yeah, so that would have been the next thing to address, and actually intermittent fasting. So it sounds like you're already getting your daily steps, and so intermittent fasting could be something else that we try. Intermittent fasting is really amazing also at balancing hormones. And when we talk about hormones, normally we're thinking about the sex hormones, which is estrogen and progesterone and all that, as being the effect. But actually, the two main hormones that do lead to weight gain is insulin and cortisol. And so intermittent fasting helps correct that. And so to start intermittent fasting, and really the goal is not to reduce your calories, but the goal is to turn the body's digestive system off, upregulate the immune system. So now there's autophagy, there's all these other processes happening, and then getting the body also to learn how to tap into fat stores. So when we eat frequently throughout the day, let's say we wake up, we have breakfast, and a few hours later we snack, and then we keep eating all these small meals throughout the day. Yes, maybe caloric wise, it might be the right intake for us. But what we're also doing is getting the body adapted to use energy from the food that we eat right away. And so instead of tapping into fat reserves in the body, it's just going to look for the immediate source of energy that we give it. And so intermittent fasting is a very, very powerful tool to help really tap into fat stores, but also to balance out hormones. And then you can start off with something like, let's say, 8 hours of eating. So your eating window is for 8 hours, and then 16 hours fasting. And then to get there, of course, you slowly, progressively get there as we spoke about the daily steps. So 12-hour minimum window is already effective enough to see a difference and to have an impact. So you can always start there, and that's pretty simple. So let's say first meal at 6, last meal at 6. If you're already kind of, in a smaller window, then maybe consider trying to do the 16-8, and eventually the 18-6, where you're eating in a 6-hour window. So first meal, let's say, is around noon, and then last meal would be around 6 p.m. And then to turn off the digestive system during that time while you're sleeping, and then also in the morning. And then trying even to add in that daily walk in the morning. So while you are fasting is very, very powerful. But again, I hope that we see this as progression, and then starting with whatever feels comfortable, remembering that we have to establish consistency first before intensity in order for us to commit and stay sustainable.
So the walk is probably better to do in the morning then, do you think? Is it more effective?
So it's very powerful if you do that low steady cardio while you are fasting. So if you're
Oh,
feeling right, so in the morning, let's say you woke up in the morning, you haven't had breakfast yet, maybe you had coffee or something like that. And by the way, when we talk about the fasting window, I also want to insert here that it's so important to focus on what is called a clean fast. So
mm,
clean fast really means that you're having water, you're having black tea, you're having black coffee, you're not adding creamers, you're not adding anything that has any flavor in your water or in your coffee, for example. Even if it's like a couple drops of almond milk, it's not the calories that matter. What matters is that you trigger insulin. So anytime that we release insulin in the body, the pancreas releases insulin, and insulin's job is to collect blood sugar and bring it to the liver for storage as a form of glycogen, or to the muscle tissue. So that's what insulin does. But then the second role of insulin is also to suppress any release of stored energy. So while we're in storage mode, we're not also going to be burning any stored energy, and the stored energy in the body is generally stored as fat. And so if you really want to tap into those fat stores, you want to make sure that you keep that clean fast. And then while you're in that clean fast, if you can do your daily walk, that is so incredibly powerful.
Something I noticed when I only started going to the gym about maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I was kind of anti-gym before that. And what I found was really interesting was in January, there's all these new signups. All of the classes were busier. And that new kind of January energy only lasted for about 10 days. And these people come in because they got a good deal, they paid the whole year and never went back again. Do you have any advice for people like that? Because I'm sure a lot of people listening to this, that they might come under that category.
Yeah, absolutely. And that just comes back again to the intensity, and that's why generally we don't commit. Or we're also focused on, let's say, the end result. And so a couple things happen that really forces us to bail or to quit on ourselves. And the first is that if we start off too strong. So if we're going from, working out 0 times a week to suddenly committing to 5 days a week, that is a massive jump. And then the second thing too is that people expect super fast results. So they may be going to the gym for 2 weeks, and then they're not seeing these immediate insane results right away. And then that also causes them to back off. And then finally, that we don't actually plan for mishaps to happen, or plan for us to derail at some point. So our fitness journey is not a straight line. It is this
Mm.
continuous curve, right? There's this constant flow because life events happen. We get ill, we get super busy at work. But that's why then the consistency comes in. And it's so important to remember that it's not about how much we do, it's just about how often we show up for ourselves. And so generally what I see, and the reason why a lot of people again quit after they make this massive commitment to themselves, is because they've never planned for mishaps, and then suddenly there is a mishap and they missed one day of a workout and now they feel like they failed. Or they sign up for these diets or challenges that promise them that in 4 or 6 weeks that there's going to be this insane transformation, and then if they miss a day or two, then oh my goodness, I'm not going to get that insane transformation, or things don't happen fast enough for them. And then also again, just getting into it too strongly and not really allowing the body to adapt, and then there's only so much that we can keep up with that. Once again, life events start to happen and then reality starts to sink in a little bit.
Great. So I'm feeling motivated now. I'm going to be walking more. So what are you working on at the moment?
At the moment, in terms of business, I'm actually scaling my course. So I have a course called Make Peace with Food, where I help women overcome out of control eating, such as binge eating, emotional eating, stress eating. And I launched this in a format in last August. I had actually launched it last year and just changed the format a little bit. And right now for January, we're going to be scaling that. So we're going to be able to bring in more women to support them through that. I'm also launching my HitDex app officially in the store in January, and marketing that too. So if anyone's looking for really simple workouts to do, my workouts are 6 to 12 minutes long. It's mostly body weight. And it's a really great way to keep variety. That's also a great way to access it. And it's, of course, a free download. So if anyone's interested in that,
You can do that at
do
home.
those.
You can do it at
Yeah,
home.
yeah,
Perfect.
absolutely.
No
Yeah.
equipment, just the body weight.
There's body weight, there's minimal equipment. So light dumbbells, you get to choose though the equipment. If you want it to complete body weight, that's possible. Otherwise, things like elastic tubing, little medicine balls, little dumbbells, those are the type of equipments that you would need to follow along to.
And I saw you're doing a retreat as well.
Yeah, I just finished one up 2 weeks ago. It was in Costa Rica, and I have another one coming up in Greece next October. So I'm super excited about that. It's called Transformation in Paradise Metamorphosis, and the goal really is to help people overcome self-sabotaging behavior and any unwanted eating behavior that really gets in the way of their goals, and then just to get in that place where you're fully accepting and self-loving, and focusing on all the elements of health at the same time.
So I can imagine for me as a foodie, I would just be thinking about the amazing food. Did you have to test the food or?
Unfortunately, I had to test it all, and
It's a great
so
job.
delicious. Yeah, Greek food is so delicious, and even in Costa Rica, we had also this gorgeous, gorgeous vegan food that we were eating throughout the week, and I was able to share cookbooks with everybody to be able to make some of those dishes. So yeah,
I always
delicious.
find it's more powerful to share this type of food with people who eat animal food. And when they
Yes.
enjoy it and they feel satiated, that's really amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we had a lot of members coming to the retreat. I had about 15 people join. And so a few of them were a little bit concerned about, well, what do you mean there's gonna be no chicken? Like there's like not even one night of fish. I'm like, just surrender to it. Let's see. Let's see how you feel. Like this, let it be this big experiment. And then by the end of the week, I just couldn't believe it. The people who were a little bit apprehensive around that just really enjoyed the food. They got some new ideas also into their cuisine, and whether they do decide to switch 100% or not, what I notice that they're starting to do now is incorporate more meatless meals, which already is a great start.
Yeah, one thing I just remembered actually, I remember I went to Ireland earlier this year, and the Irish supermarkets have really improved. And then they used to be just potatoes and just the local produce. And I was showing my auntie all of this vegan food that I had bought, and she said, "I'd love to eat like that, but I can't because she's making food for the family." And they don't want that. So I mean, that's a lot of women are in that position who are cooking for a family, but they want to, not have to create or different dishes. They want to just have one dish for the family. What advice would you give to those people?
Yeah, that's so great too, and that's a really important question, because what we want to also make sure that we don't do is not cook 10 different meals so that we're pleasing every single
Mm.
person. And so my family, like my kids, they like fish every now and then, and I do like to make that for them. And so I'll have my main meals of it could be potatoes and vegetables, and there's quinoa, and that is the main meal, and then on the side there could be that additional sort of supplement for those who want it. But it becomes very easy when you're focusing on the main meal being 100% vegetarian or vegan or whatever it is that you're wanting to focus on, and then just on the side having that other option for people instead of having it the other way around.
Mm.
And again, what I've actually noticed it does is it exposes us to new tastes and new dish ideas. And one of the think limiting beliefs that I oftentimes hear is that vegan food doesn't taste good, that there's no flavor. And so just again to overcome that, have the main meals just really represent the deliciousness and all the flavors that are possible from focusing and cooking 100% plant-based, and then having the other options for those that are wanting it. And I would say even most of the time I wouldn't even have that supplement available for my kids, and they're completely happy eating lentils and all this delicious food, and it's so easy to make curries. And if you have access to the two, I think, most powerful tools in the kitchen is a pressure cooker and then an air fryer. Because if you have access to those two tools, oh my goodness, you can create absolutely anything in moments. And it's really delicious to make. I made asparagus last night in my air fryer, just a little bit of garlic, a couple drops of oil, and just perfection. So also having those gadgets is really helpful too.
I think my number one kitchen appliance is the Vitamix.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for soups and everything. Especially now, I'm going to make a pumpkin red lentil soup tonight.
Oh,
I kind of
yummy.
make it in, boil it first and then put it in the Vitamix with turmeric and ginger, and it's my sacral
Yeah.
chakra soup.
Sacral shoppers. It sounds
It's all
delicious.
orange. A couple of quick questions for you. What's the book that changed your life?
Oh goodness, I don't even know where to begin. I think I'm gonna say The Untethered Soul.
Okay.
I would probably list it number five. The Untethered Soul was a very, very important one for me. I have gone to visit Michael Singer a few times since, but I
Oh,
probably
wow.
listened to it, and this is an understatement, at least 14 times when my mom passed, and it really just helped me just get into that place of acceptance. Yeah.
Amazing. I read The Surrender Experiment a few couple of months ago. I just love that book. Yeah.
Yeah, so good. So good.
Do you have a
Yeah.
phrase or affirmation that you live by?
Um, I have a few, but the one I think I want to offer today is in God I move and breathe and have my being. And this I say and I practice while I'm doing my deep diaphragmatic breathing. And it just reminds me that I surrender to a higher power and that I am comfortable in the uncomfortableness of uncertainty.
That's amazing. That's total surrender then. Yeah. So where can people find you?
So you can get in touch with me on my Instagram. Is probably the easiest way to reach me at Sherry Shaban Fitness. I do have a link there as well to grab free downloads, free workouts as well, and many free resources. And then, of course, the podcast is a great place as well to listen to conversations to help you shift into that place where you are falling in love with fitness and falling in love with the journey and ultimately yourself.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much, Venus. I loved it.